Alright, hey guys. So I am outside today. I can barely see with my sunglasses on. Like, it's a complete black screen right now, so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But there are going to be noises, birds, cars. The neighbor behind me is hosing his house right now. So anyways, I got the sun on me. It's beautiful outside. I thought I would just read the last chapter of part 2 of Virginia Giuffre's book. And then tomorrow I will be going live. So catch me tomorrow night. I don't know exactly what time. Probably later. Like 9 or 10. Something like that. So, alright. We're going to start on chapter 15, I believe it is. Let me see. Yep, 15. And then it's called A Bridge Too Far. And then we'll start part 3, which is called Survivor, and that will start next week probably. Okie dokie. Unless my live is like really lame tomorrow and it's a short chapter, then we could do that. But all right, you guys listening? Sorry, I gotta watch my posture. All right, I'm just gonna put this blanket over me because it feels like cushiony. Feels a little bit better. Okay, chapter 15, A Bridge Too Far. Epstein once told me that every girl he had sex with had benefited in one of 3 ways. Either he gave them money to better their lives, or he helped jumpstart their career, or he married them off to one of his successful friends. All the girls in Epstein's household knew, for example, that in 1994, a former girlfriend of Epstein's, a woman in her 20s, married another man in his social circle. Several of us had met this man. More than once, Epstein had brought up his ex-girlfriend's marriage to this man as proof of his largesse, largest, Largesse, largesse, as if he had arranged it. He told me he'd be willing to do the same sort of matchmaking for me. When he said this, he clearly believed that what he was offering me was a life-changing gift. He clung to the idea that, at his core, he was a generous benefactor. Meanwhile, he also fantasized about improving the human race by fathering children who carried his superior genes. Sometimes he'd talk about his plans to use the Zorro Ranch as a literal breeding ground to propagate babies. He probably did that. Who would birth these imagined offspring? The girls he kept in his orbit, of course, and he thought we'd see it as an honor. Maxwell was a different animal. Selfish, certainly, but more fragile than Epstein, especially after she turned 40 on Christmas Day 2001. The insecurities that lurked under the surface of her outgoing persona emerged. A blazing beauty when she was young, Maxwell was still attractive, but her short haircut, while provocatively stylish for a woman of 20 or so, looked a bit haggard on someone twice that age. Increasingly, it was as if Maxwell... She does look haggard. Increasingly, it was as if Maxwell was trying too hard. While she still prided herself on being the matron of Epstein's house, she seemed to chafe more and more at being seen as matronly. After I returned to the fold, she started to take these frustrations out on me in brutal new ways. I'd always believed her when she said she wasn't possessive of Epstein and didn't care whom he had sex with. She's lying. Now, though, she seemed fiercely jealous of anyone to whom Epstein showed affection. Maxwell was a lot of things. Glamorous, captivating, boldly sexual in a way that many men found alluring. But she was not a nurturer, and I think she and Epstein could both see that I was. You have a very maternal instinct, he'd say. You have a very maternal instinct, he'd say to me more than once, and now he immediately resumed our nightly tuck-in routine. Ew. In response, Maxwell began lashing out at me during our threesomes. For example, she would grab a larger-than-life-size dildo and use it to hurt me. If I complained, she'd hurt me more. For some time now, she had teased me that soon I'd be too old for Epstein. If I, an 18-year-old, was too mature for him, she had to know that he saw her as downright ancient. But while her motivations were unkind, Maxwell was right to warn me about the implications of getting older. In the context of Epstein's world, if I wanted to glimpse my future, all I had to do was look at Sarah Kellen. For a few years before I had met her, she had serviced Epstein sexually, or so I had been told. But as she entered her early 20s, she'd aged out and was forced into a new phase of servitude, recruiting others. My sense of guilt about the times I had recruited girls had been steadily growing. Now I began to worry that if I stayed with Epstein and Maxwell much longer, I would soon be like Kellen, responsible for luring an unending parade of young girls into a situation that I knew would damage them forever. There's an asterisk at that, so the asterisk means Kellen would later claim that she too was a victim of Epstein's. But at Ghislaine Maxwell's trial, Kellen was identified by victims as having booked them for massages with Epstein. And at Maxwell's sentencing in 2022, Judge Allison Nathan named Kellen as a knowing participant in the criminal conspiracy. All right. If there was one thing I knew about it, was damage, the lasting reverberation of past trauma. I had been trafficked to dozens of men by this point, and I remembered their faces clearly. Shut the fuck up, birds! They're being so loud. Can you be a little quieter? I'm reading! Alright. There was old men and even older men, nerdy, shy men, and boorish, arrogant men. There were men who wanted me to wear outfits, and men who wanted to see me naked, and men who didn't notice if I was clothed as long as I touched them. There were men who couldn't get or maintain erections. There were men who behaved as if I were lucky to be with them. There was at least one man who ignored me as I serviced him sexually, preferring instead to focus his eyes upon and even to fondle Epstein. Some men seemed grateful for my attention, particularly the septuagenarians, that's a 70-year-old, many of whom thanked me afterward, calling me a good girl. While I appreciated that these ancient men were less brutish than others, I still felt sick when they said that. Their words made it undeniably clear that for me, or for them, my childlike appearance was part of my sexual appeal. It is truly impossible to say how many men were there, in part because I didn't keep count, and in part because my interactions with many of them were so similar. Still, I was expected to make all men happy, even though doing so made me miserable. Oh, I got a fucking cobweb connected to me. It's huge. It's going up in the air now. Ew, that's gross. It was like on me. Must be from the grill, because I got the phone on the grill. This wasn't my ideal place to want to shoot, but you gotta do what you gotta do. Alright, where was I? Alright. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse for me, they did. Epstein trafficked me to a man who raped me more savagely than anyone had before. We were on Epstein's Island when I was ordered to take this man to a cabana. Immediately it was clear that this man, whom I had taken pains to describe in legal filings only as a well-known prime minister, wasn't interested in caresses. Is that Tony Blair? He wanted violence. He repeatedly choked me until I lost consciousness and took pleasure in seeing me fear for my life. Horrifically, the prime minister laughed when he hurt me and got more aroused when I begged him to stop. I emerged for, okay, this is trigger probably for this, well, it's trigger for every chapter. I think we should know that by now, but I do put the trigger warning in the actual title, so I don't have to say it every time because I do forget. I'm new to this book reading, so yes, trigger warning. I emerged from the cabana bleeding from my mouth, vagina, and anus. For days it hurt to breathe and to swallow. Afterward, I tearfully begged Epstein not to send me back to the Prime Minister. I got down on my knees and pleaded with him. I don't know if Epstein feared the man or if he owed him a favor, but he wouldn't make any promises, saying coldly of the politician's brutality, "You'll get that sometimes." Today I know that Epstein liked to tell friends that women were merely a life support system for a vagina. I didn't know that then. Today, I know that Epstein made the following chilling distinction. I'm not a sexual predator. I'm an offender. It's the difference between a murderer and a person who steals a bagel. I didn't know that then either. Today I see how little he cared about the girls and women he abused. But for a long time I couldn't see it. Or maybe I didn't want to see it. My experience being brutalized by the Prime Minister and the way Epstein glossed over it changed that for me. Before the Prime Minister's attack, Epstein had me fooled. I thought that Epstein's predilection for childlike girls was a sickness, but that in his twisted way he meant well. After the attack, I couldn't stay a fool. Having been treated so brutally and then seeing Epstein's callous reaction to how terrorized I felt, I had to accept that Epstein meted out praise merely as a manipulation to keep me subservient. Epstein cared only about Epstein. Birds! It's like they're getting louder on purpose. At that point, I hit rock bottom. I now knew I wouldn't survive. I saw only two possible options. Either someone Epstein trafficked me would kill me, or I would take my own life. About 8 weeks or so after my encounter with the Prime Minister, Epstein informed me, as he often did, that he wanted me to service an important friend on one of his jets. Epstein told me what time to be at the private airport in Palm Beach and said I would only be up in the air for an hour. Taking him at his word, I got Tony and some of his friends to drive me there, then asked them to stay and wait until I returned. I had no idea who I was meeting that day as I climbed the stairs that led to the plane. Then I ducked my head and stepped inside. "Hello again," said the Prime Minister, the man I feared more than any other. The blood rushed to my head, and I could barely breathe. Will he kill me this time? I wondered, and for a dizzy moment I thought I might faint. There's a bee, a bumblebee. The pilot discreetly closed the door to the cockpit, and we took off. For the next hour, I was on high alert, braced for a fatal blow. As it turned out, the second encounter with the Prime Minister was more typical of those I had with other men. His only goal was ejaculation. Still, it was the longest 60 minutes of my life, as I anticipated the Prime Minister once again injuring or asphyxiating me. Asphyxiating is choking. When the airplane touched down, I emerged in a daze, stumbling back to the car where Tony and his friends were. It was Tony Blair, I was right. I don't know why she just doesn't call him by his name. Or is she talking about Tony, her boyfriend? Must be her boyfriend. I didn't know it then, but my second interaction with the Prime Minister was the beginning of the end for me. My behavior began to change. I had bumped into a beautiful young stranger in my favorite bookstore, realized she would be perfect for Epstein, and then intentionally leave without getting her number. A new sense of agency was taking a hold inside of me. While I couldn't yet save myself, at least I could spare one girl at a time. I'm glad that she's getting that into her brain now, because she was starting to get under Epstein's spell, and now that because he didn't protect her from this guy, she's going to start to rebel. She's going to start to see that he doesn't have her best interests, obviously. So, yeah. Then, sometime in the summer of 2002, Maxwell and Epstein pushed me past my breaking point. The three of us had spent an afternoon snorkeling in the shallow reefs around Epstein's island. As we dried off on the dock, I noticed Epstein share a glance with Maxwell before he sat down next to me. He put his hand on my back, a fond gesture. I always say gesture, but it's gesture. But I say gesture because there's this game that I used to play. It was basically like charades, and they called it gestures because you had to do gestures. And now I just say gestures, so I'm sorry if I fucking fucked that word up. I'll try to correct it if I notice it, but a fond gesture. That was a rare for him. I hope you know how much I appreciate you for embracing my lifestyle, he began. Little does he know. As Maxwell cozied up next to me, too. Over the past several months, you've shown me a devotion that is difficult to find. The friends I've introduced you to agree. You are a delightful young woman. He took a breath, and I wondered where all this was going. Then he came out with it. Oh no. Jenna, I want you to have our baby. Though I had heard him talk hypothetically about seeding the human race with his DNA, His proposal shocked me. I remember trying not to flinch as Maxwell joined in with financial particulars. "You'd have round-the-clock nannies to help you," she said, her voice oddly chirpy. "Jeffrey would buy you a mansion in Palm Beach or New York, your choice, and you'd have a hefty allowance." If memory serves, she floated the astronomical figure of $200,000 per month. But then came the conditions. Like a modern-day handmaid, I would have to sign over to Epstein and Maxwell all legal rights to the child. I would have to travel with the child wherever and whenever Epstein wanted. I would have to attest in writing that Epstein and I were not a couple and that the baby would remain with him if we ever had a falling out. That's how Maxwell put it, as if it were conceivable that the end of Epstein and my relationship might ever be a mutually agreed upon parting. That was laughable to me. Everybody knew that Epstein was the one who ended his relationships with young girls, never the other way around. Up to that point, the idea of having kids had been a distant dream. I still felt like a child myself sometimes, so it was hard to imagine me being a mom. Given what the doctor had told me the year before, I wasn't sure if I could even get pregnant again, let alone carry a baby to term. But still, everything about Epstein and Maxwell's brazen request felt wrong. There was no way I wanted to bring a child into the world for them to raise. What if the baby were female? Was the plan for Epstein and Maxwell to have me bring that little girl up until she reached puberty, then hand her off for them to abuse? I wanted no part of it. Epstein and Maxwell had made so many demands that I had met, ignoring my own feelings in the hope of pleasing them, but this proposal would endanger another person, a helpless child. It was a bridge too far. That's the name of the chapter. Today I'm sad that I found it easier to stand up for an as yet to be conceived baby than for myself. Well, that's perfectly understandable. With perfect clarity, I simply knew that I couldn't agree to their proposal. That said, I also knew I couldn't just tell Epstein and Maxwell no. That was too dangerous. For the first time in more than 2 years, I began actively seeking a way to escape, buying time by pretending to think over their offer. After a few days, I came up with at least part of a plan. I told the two of them that yes, I'd have their baby, but first I had hoped that they would deliver on promise that they dangled in front of me the first day we met. At long last, would they help me get formally trained as a masseuse? I politely asked them to consider it. Nobody says masseuse, they say massage therapist. So just want to get that straight. Alright. It sounded like somebody was coming up from behind the woods and like they were gonna attack me or some shit. At least it would be on camera. You guys would see it. You guys would know what happened. Alright, it was just before my 19th birthday. Quiet! When we were on Epstein's island again, when Epstein gestured for me to sit on his lap. "First of all, happy birthday," he said, his face close to mine. "We know how hard you've worked, and we agree you deserve something special, so we're sending you to Thailand." I must have looked confused. I had assumed if Epstein agreed to get me trained, it would happen somewhere closer to home. But Epstein said that Maxwell had found a school in Chiang Mai, in the northern part of the country, where I could get certified in Thai massage in just 8 weeks. I started to thank him, but he wasn't finished. "Just one more thing," Epstein said. "While you are in Chiang Mai, I will need you to get to know a particular girl." He told me later it sounded tied to me and said if I thought she met his criteria, he would fly her to the United States. So even when I'm far away, I'll still be recruiting? I asked myself silently. So even if I'm far away, I'll still be recruiting? At the same time, though, I realized this might be the only chance for an exit, and I'd be crazy not to seize it. So I smiled and gave him a warm hug. It was important to make Epstein and Maxwell believe I was on their side. Over the next few weeks, Maxwell arranged for me to attend the International Training Massage School, which had a reputation as one of the best centers for the study of Northern-style Thai massage. She bought me a coach ticket and reserved me a room at the Dusit Royal Princess. a 4-star hotel. Epstein paid the bill in advance. I was sent home to Florida to pack and say my goodbyes. By this point, Tony and I had moved in with his parents, so I spent most of my time there trying to decide what to put in storage and what I should try to carry with me. While I didn't know what the future held, I sensed that I should take with me anything I couldn't live without. I also invited my parents, and my brother Danny and his new wife Lynette came to see me off. I remember I took Skydie, then 14, aside and told him I'd always be there for him. For those few days, I pretended I was a normal girl preparing for an exotic vacation, not a prisoner plotting her escape. In mid-September of 2002, Epstein and Maxwell arranged for me to return to New York. I had continued on to Thailand solo from there. On the morning my commercial flight was leaving Miami for New York City, I said one last goodbye to my dog, Mary Jane, and then Tony and I loaded my many suitcases into my Dodge truck. I've never been a light packer, but this time I was even heavier than usual. My luggage held every memento and photo that was important to me. We wrestled my many bags out of the truck, which I was letting Tony use in my absence, and he helped me haul everything to the ticket counter. Luggage finally checked, we headed for security. That's when I broke down weeping. Tony was mystified. Hadn't I been away for several weeks before? What was making me so emotional? I couldn't explain it, even to myself, but I had an inkling that I wouldn't be coming back. I hugged Tony tighter than I ever had that day and told him how much I would miss him. Take care of the pup, I said, as I always did when I was jetting off somewhere with Epstein. Tony said he would and gave me one last kiss, and then I walked away. For the next several days in Manhattan, Epstein and Maxwell put me to work training Epstein's new assistant, a Czech beauty named Nadia Marcinkova, who he said would be filling in for me while I was away. Marcinkova was about 3 years younger than me, the same age I had been when I first met Epstein, and he required that she and I massage him together, much like Maxwell and I had done back in 2000. Follow Jano's lead, Epstein told Nadia the first session. I could see how hungrily he looked at her then, and this stirred up some feelings in me. All those stories I had told myself about being needed, about mattering, about being the only one who could take care of him, all that was so obviously untrue. As much as I wanted to disappear from Epstein's life, it stung to be so easily replaced. On September 21st, Epstein and Maxwell were leaving New York on an extended trip to Africa. Marcinkova was flying with them on Epstein's Boeing 727, as were several high-profile guests. The actors Chris Tucker and Kevin Spacey, former President Clinton, not to mention 6 U.S. Secret Service agents. Clinton has said the trip was a humanitarian mission that included stops related to the work of his foundation. Yeah, right. Before they left, Maxwell sat me down for a serious chat. Once I landed in Chiang Mai, she said I needed to immediately track down that Thai girl Epstein was interested in. Maxwell wanted to hear from me regularly about my progress on that. She handed me my travel documents, which included locations of Western Union offices where she'd be wiring me money. I still have the envelope, all of it came in. On the outside, Maxwell had written the name of the Thai girl and 2 phone numbers, her own cell phone and that of Jojo, Epstein's New York butler. Call Ms. Maxwell, she commanded in the capital letters. See you in 2 months, Epstein said before he and Maxwell left. I nodded, and as the door shut behind them, I felt a mix of elation and tension. Freedom like this was rare for girls in Epstein's orbit, but in truth, I felt I'd been trapped since the age of 7. Run, survive, run, survive. That had been my rhythm even before I met Jeffrey and Ghislaine. After more than 2 years, I was about to break out of the gilded cage they had built for me. Now I just had to keep them from putting me back in it. 6 days later, I boarded a commercial jet, headed for Bangkok, buckled my seatbelt, and closed my eyes. Everybody knew that Epstein was the one who ended his relationships with young girls, never the other way around. And I knew that too. But there's a first time for everything! Yeah, Virginia! You go, girl. Obviously, she ended it with him because she got married in Chiang Mai. So that's the end of chapter 15, A Bridge Too Far, I think, right? A Bridge Too Far, yep. Part 3 is called Survivor, and she has a little, it's Natalie Merchant, the song Carnival. It's, have I been wrong? Have I been wise to shut my eyes and play along? Hypnotized, paralyzed by what my eyes have found. My eyes have found. To see. Something like that. Anyways, I wanted to tell you a story quick as I close this chapter with Epstein. It's Epstein related. So I don't know if you guys notice on the internet, there's a picture from the Epstein files. It's of him at his island, and I call it Little St. Jeff's. They call it Little St. James. It is Little St. James, but whatever, I call it Little St. Jeff's. But anyways, there's a picture of him. He's in the middle, and he's got his arms like this, and there's one boy on one side, one boy on the other. One boy's got dark hair. The other boy is blonde, but it looks maybe like maybe it's not natural. I'm not sure if that's his natural hair color. But they do kind of look like brothers. I didn't see twins. I didn't, because they're different heights too. And like it was in a sunny kind of picture, so one twin looked angry, the other one was smiling. So I couldn't really tell. But they think it's the Island Boy twins. The Island Boys, you know, those guys with the weird cigar looking hair dreads. Anyways, there's a show on Tubi. It's like a documentary. It's new. It's just added to Tubi, and it's on the Island Boys. And as I was watching it, I didn't believe that Epstein was their dad. That was what they were saying about that picture, that was the Island Boys and Epstein is their dad, because their dad died when they were really young. Well, first they said their dad died when they were 6 years old. Then in the documentary, they say 4 years old. So I'm like, that's weird. There's a 2-year difference there. You think you would remember that. Well, then just as I was watching the documentary, I just felt more and more like, yeah, maybe that rumor is true. Like, I felt like they made the documentary to try to disprove the rumor, but it actually only made the rumor more true to me. So that's just a story I wanted to relate to you. The next chapter in Survivor is that's chapter 16. It's called The Land of Smiles, and it is a pretty short chapter. So I might actually read that tomorrow because it's from, this page? It's from 201 to 210. So it's 9 pages. 9 to 10 pages. So yes, we will be doing that for sure. So yeah, just look forward to my live, to the next chapter. Thank you for listening. Thanks for joining me on this beautiful day. Thankfully, I did not get killed hearing those rustles in the bushes. It did. It really sounded like I was going to die. Anyways, thank you. Oh, my face looks horrible in that light. If I go like this so it doesn't look so bad. All right. Peace out. Love you guys. Bye.